New piece from the Intercept outlines just how diverse the DCCC isn't at its top rank, and how certain seats the Dems believed they had secured were actually flipped by Republicans. In fact, in 7 of the districts the Republicans won, the majority of the voters were people of color.
Here to tell us more about the DCCC's consultant industrial complex is our friend, host of the Deconstructed podcast, which is fantastic, and bureau chief at The Intercept, which is also fantastic, Ryan Grimm. Great to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Ryan.
Yeah, great to see both of you.
So this is a really interesting story because in normal realm of, life, if you succeed, you usually, you get promoted, you do well. If you're a total failure, usually, it doesn't go so well for you. Those rules seem to not apply at the DCCC so much.
Right. And so that's because the way that the Democratic Party and Republican Party to some extent as well is set up is that the person who is leaving a job often has a significant role in hiring their replacement, and then that replacement then has say over how contracts over the next cycle are distributed. The vendor contracts, media consulting, these are multi-million dollar, multi-$100 million at times contracts, and so the people who are leaving go on and form consulting companies that are then paid by their former deputy. And I traced it back. You could probably even go back further, but if you start around 2006, when Rahm Emanuel is running the DCCC, you kind of have an unbroken chain of consultants from there up until the current cycle. In fact, 2006, the DCCC was run by a guy named John Lapp, who left after 2006 to form a consulting firm, Ralston Lapp, which is still a major firm that works with House Democrats and the DCCC. In fact, after 2020, Lucinda Gwynn, the executive director of the DCCC, left and joined that firm. It's now called Ralston Lapp Gwynn, and continues to get a lot of money, from the Democratic Party. All of which would be fine and wonderful, if the party were performing up to its own even lower expectations. 2020 they were expecting to gain seats. Instead, they actually lost a significant number.
So explain a little bit here in terms of the consultants and the bans and the things that the DCCC has instituted against more progressive aligned candidates.
Right, and so there was always kind of an informal ban and a very closed off ecosystem that existed. So, for instance, Lapp leaves the DCCC. His spouse ends up running the House Majority PAC, which was the super PAC that's affiliated with the DCCC. She's still a senior advisor at House Majority PAC. And so hundreds of millions of dollars come into the dark money groups, the super PAC, and the DCCC, and then get spent mostly on television ads. And the consultants on the outside take a clip. They take somewhere between 5 and 15% of the money. So if you do $100 million worth of an ad buy, you're pulling off the top of that $5 to $15 million. And so that's where the real lucrative money is in politics, is in this ad buying, because these consultants, they build relationships over time with people at TV stations, so that if a candidate wants to cut an ad immediately in response to something that just happened, and they want to get it up on air that night, like that's an extremely valuable commodity to have. And so you build these tight relationships with these stations, and then for that you pull all of this money off the top. I'm sure there are a lot of boats probably in harbors on the East Coast, Nick, that have been bought on the back of these commissions. And so that as an executive director leaves and forms a consulting firm, often a deputy executive director then becomes executive director, and the expectation is that they are going to then shower the former executive director with this consulting money. And as people move around, you see it. So a former DCCC executive director was Robbie Mook in 2012. Mook went on, and ran Terry McAuliffe's gubernatorial campaign in 2013 and hired GMMB, which is a consulting firm that does a lot of corporate work and does a lot of work for the DCCC. He then ran Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016 and ran more than $300 million through GMMB, through these television ads. So they're taking a commission off the top of that. Robbie Mook is now, president of House Majority PAC, back where he started, except he's instead of being the DCCC, he's at the DCCC's super PAC.
I mean, that one story alone is incredible. Like, there may not be a single person in America more responsible for the election of Donald J. Trump than Robbie Mook. Seriously. I mean, seriously, there's a great argument to be made for that. This guy should be drummed out of Democratic politics, never to be heard from again, except to learn what he did wrong. So you can never, ever, ever repeat those mistakes. And instead, he's still getting rich in the mix with a prominent position in the consultant industrial complex. And the reason why this is so important, Ryan, is because when you want to understand why the party goes so hard against the left and against outsiders, even putting like the left-right labels aside, just against outsiders, this is a big part of the story. Because these people who have the reins of power, who are in control of the party, they make millions. And you're right, the media buys are where it's at. They're making a lot of money off of this. And if you bring an outsider in who's got different people, well, they may not be able to cash in as effectively.
Right. And to go back to Sagar's question about the blacklist, it was 2020, the cycle. That was the first cycle where they made it explicit. No, we're no longer just going to meet in back rooms and deliver the contracts. We're going to actually put it on our website that if you have worked for a primary challenger, that you cannot work for us anymore. And so not only does that close off the ecosystem to new people, what it says is that if you want to build a consulting business and you don't have enough political work, the only other way that you can supplement that income is to work for corporate America. And so all of the pollsters that work for the DCCC and a significant number of the strategists do half of their work or less for the Democratic Party and then do the rest of the work for corporations. And so you'll have let's say you have a pollster who's doing a focus group or a poll, and they find out that people don't like it that insulin costs thousands of dollars a month. But the pollster also has Eli Lilly as a client. And actually, this is a real example that's in the article. The Hart Research has Eli Lilly as a client. Now you're asking this pollster to write a memo to a candidate or to the campaign suggesting a strategy. They can either say, well, we could hammer away at Eli Lilly for its high insulin prices, but Eli Lilly is also a client of this firm. They know that in the back of their mind. Now, maybe this particular pollster has so much integrity, they go for it anyway. Or maybe they say, you know what, let's just run a campaign on high drug prices overall. Aren't high drug prices generally also bad? So let's write a more generic version that says we're going to take on the pharmaceutical industry and we're going to drive down drug prices and not mention any particular companies here. And so, if you're relying on these firms that are also doing all this corporate work, it does set up these inherent conflicts of interest, although there are fewer conflicts nowadays on cultural issues with corporations. So it sets up this incentive process where you can push candidates culturally toward a more liberal direction, but you can't necessarily push them in a more economic populist direction.
Yeah, amazing.
Boy, that
Pretty
explains
amazing.
a lot right there. Ryan, thank you so much. Great reporting.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Coming up, former state senator and Bernie Sanders campaign co-chair Nina Turner on her race for Congress when Rising returns.